Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There was a time when only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew the reality of the human being. That was the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked all the souls, "Am I not your Rabb?" And all the souls replied, "Yes." At that time, the souls only knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the conditions for the transfer of the soul to this world through the process of birth. So the human being was transferred from that realm of souls to the realm of this dunya through the womb of his mother. And after spending 9 months in the womb of the mother, the human being came to the womb of this earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the same question, "Am I not your Rabb?" And here the test started. The human being was now being tested, whether he remembered, whether what he agreed to in the previous life, whether he was going to answer the question in the same way. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with the shaitan and with his nafs. And most people forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabb. He is the provider, the cherisher, the sustainer. Because in this life, in the womb of this world, there are so many ilahs that compete with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it seems that Allah is not the provider, He is not the cherisher, He is not the sustainer. It is the things of the dunya, the material things of this life, whatever they might be, whether it's money or it's power or nation, all the things that are visible. So what's not visible, the one who is not visible is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He is the one who is creator of all the conditions. So this is a big test for the human being, whether he will remember who his provider is. In this life, all types of challenges, all types of tests, trials come, and one has to be careful that one is not misled, deceived by the shaitan. Because shaitan will come and confuse the person and will give all kinds of arguments to prove that Allah is not the Rabb, Allah is not the provider. This thing goes on till the end of a person's life on this earth. When he goes into this grave, then of course the same question is asked, "Who's your Rabb?" And the answer will depend upon how he answered that question in this life. If his life was spent in obeying the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if his life was spent in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be able to answer that question. But if his life was not spent in obedience to Allah, he will not be able to answer the question. So that is the third stage, where he is going to be questioned. And of course, the final stage is the stage of reward and punishment. So this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create this as a life of reward and punishment. He showed this only to give some idea as to what reward and punishment is. But the real life, the real place of reward and punishment is the akhirah, where a person will see the results of what he did. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent guidance through His prophets, through His books, to tell people not to be deceived by the shaitan, not to be deceived by the nafs. The shaitan will come from all sides. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has warned the mankind. He's your enemy. He's going to attack you from the front, from the rear, from the right, from the left. and his goal is to take everybody to Jahannam. This is why it's important to remain connected with the Quran, because the Quran is the only book that tells in detail, in great detail, what this battle is about. This battle is against an enemy that one does not see. And this is for every single human being. Every human being is treated like an enemy by the shaitan. And he will not leave his efforts till right till the end. And the book of Allah and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came to tell mankind to be watchful, to be careful of this enemy. The whole mankind is lost in this battle. And this is a very critical battle. This battle will go on till the end of times. And no one will be able to say on the Day of Judgment that we were not warned, we were not aware. So the education system that man has created is only good, is only helpful till the time the person enters the grave. And once he enters the grave, that education is of no value to him. It's very important that the education that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given is given to all mankind. That's why prophets came, to guide people. They didn't come to teach people science. They didn't come to teach people the material benefits of the material world. They came to teach them about a world which is to come and which is to last forever. This education, unfortunately, is ignored by most mankind. And Allah says in the Quran that most people will not believe. So every human being, if he is concerned about his eternal life, his life that will begin after his death, he should be prepared for that. This life has been given only for the sole reason, only reason Allah created this life was to test, which will determine what happens to him after he dies. The teachings of the shaitan, the teachings of many educational institutions, that once this life ends, there is nothing after this. And this has been mentioned in the Quran, that there were people in the past who said the same thing, that when we die, there is nothing after this. So the believer is going to be sifted from the disbeliever. In this life, everybody enjoys the benefits that Allah has provided. The believer and the disbeliever are treated equally in this world. They enjoy the benefits, they enjoy the pleasures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. But in the next world, Allah will not treat them the same way. The pleasures will only be for the believers, and the disbelievers will be denied that. This is the need of all mankind to study the Quran and study it with great care. This is a book of guidance. It's a book for all mankind. It's a guide to success. What is real success? Real success is not money and power and pleasures for a short time. These are weapons the shaitan uses to deceive mankind. These are the things that he will dangle in front of people to show that this is success. People like Pharaoh and Haman and Karun were deceived. They thought this was success, but when death came to them, they realized this was not success, it was deception. So this world is a fool's paradise. Only fools think of this as paradise. Anything that's going to be taken away, a king who loses his kingdom, when death comes, no matter how powerful he is, his dream is over. So people who are pursuing the dunya, thinking that this is success, should 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 reflect that what Allah calls success is real success. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put success in obedience. And in disobedience, no matter how much people achieve, all the great achievers of the past and of the present will find out when they die that this was not reality. No more reality than a dream. And this realization, if it comes to the point of death, will be too late. There will be regrets. That's why this education of the Quran, of the Hadith, the knowledge of that is very essential, and parents should take great care that they should give education not only of the worldly needs but also of the needs of forever, for the akhirah. Sending children to good schools, good universities, colleges is just one part of that. But unfortunately, many parents neglect this education, thinking that it's not important. And this is why the Quran mentions, save yourselves and your families from the fire of Jahannam. So these are warnings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives in His book. So just being satisfied that I've given my children best education, send them to best schools, most expensive schools, the most expensive universities, and I've given them all the things of the dunya, of the world, and I've done my duty, that is not correct. Duty doesn't end there. Instructing children to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a daily basis, stay away from haram, obedience to the orders, commandments of Allah as shown by Rasulullah, not as I think. This is very important. A lot of parents have fallen into this trap that I think this is good for my child. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already determined what is good and what is not good. There are very clear rules, there are very clear guidelines. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given complete knowledge of this. So no human being can say, has an excuse that I did not know. And this knowledge, of course, requires time. It takes time to learn these things. Just imagine to become a professional, it takes like 20, 30 years. Almost half of one's life is spent in just becoming a professional. And then just half of that time is left to enjoy the benefits of that education. And that is not even guaranteed. How many people we know who spend 20, 30 years achieving worldly success, getting degrees and getting ready to enjoy the benefits of that, and then death overtook them. They were not able to benefit from the education. So this is a lesson for everybody. There is no guarantee that all the efforts we make will bring results. We have seen from personal experience, people have made great efforts. They spend a lot of time, energy, resources to achieve a goal, but death ended all those dreams. The future is uncertain. The future of this dunya is uncertain. But the day of judgment is certain, because Allah has told about it. And the akhirah is certain. So anyone who gives up his akhirah, the certain, for the uncertain dunya, is not a very wise person. The person who is wise is one who is working for something certain. No one is going to invest in a company that may end, that may close at any time. You don't see too many people making investments in companies and businesses where they're not certain of getting a profit. So this dunya is like that. There's no certainty that whatever effort one has made, one is going to get the rewards for that. But the rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised in the akhirah are certain. And a person who is a believer of that will be able to do those things. A person who doesn't believe in that will not be able to do that. The example of Sahaba is before everybody. They really believed that there is a life after death. And whatever they did was done in a way that their akhirah would not be affected. They took losses in dunya to protect their gains in the akhirah. Unfortunately, a lot of people protect their gains of dunya without worrying about their loss in the akhirah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, you prefer the life of this dunya, but the akhirah is better. So just imagine how much emphasis Allah has placed on the akhirah. If there was no akhirah, there would be no dunya. The dunya is just a bridge to the akhirah. It is very important because this will determine what happens to the person in the akhirah. And millions and billions of people are spending their lives as if there is nothing after death. This is an assumption. This is just what you might call wishful thinking. They think this is the only life and this is the only time to enjoy as much as one can enjoy. How many people plan for future? They make a lot of money. They have lots of savings, and they are hoping that when they retire, they will go and enjoy themselves. And that never happens. They're maybe afflicted by some disease or some other tragedy. So when a person is living in a life where there are all kinds of tragedies and all kinds of mishaps on a daily basis, how can a person plan and be happy with that and think that this is going to happen? How many plans go bad? How many nations made great plans? How many great empires made great plans that they would be successful and they will be ruling the world, and we know what happened to them. They made great efforts. Some of them spent their entire lives trying to conquer the world and establish their empires. And when the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came, all their dreams were shattered. So these are all examples before mankind. People should reflect and think what the Quran is saying. What Allah is saying is for the benefit of mankind. And let not our desires, the foolishness, or the shaitan deceive people. It is in everybody's interest to spend time on this education. And this is why in the work of Tabligh, there's a great emphasis on giving time to go out and learn what makes Allah happy. As it said, in order to see the trees, you have to go out of the forest. Because once you're inside, you'll not be able to see that. So you go out of the forest, and then you see the reality. So when one is living in this environment of dunya, the pleasures and all the things that surround us, one is not able to see the reality of this. So time is very important. Time is not going to come back. This is one commodity that is gone forever, no matter how rich a person is. Even the richest person in the world cannot buy time, cannot get his time back. So time is moving, and people may find that at the end of their life, their time was wasted. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the understanding of the Quran and to live our lives in accordance with the Quran. Wa akhirat dawana in alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.